So good morning. My name is Kevin Carpenter. I'm a volunteer at Cppcon, and this morning I have Kate Gregory with us to talk about her upcoming class and talks that we've got going on at Cppcon this year. And so, Kate, for those people that don't know you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I like to say I've been using C++ since before Microsoft had a C++ compiler. And last year I decided to count on my fingers when it was, and I've decided it was 1987. It's actually a little fuzzy. I can't prove that, but I'm going to say it was. So over 30 years. And I'm having a great time. C++ these days is a whole different language, and I'm liking it a lot.
That is for certain. I must say that I've been fortunate enough that I've got to work with you and learn from you in the past. In fact, one of my first Cppcons, after we worked together a little bit, you suggested a lightning talk, which I learned a lot from, and I learned a lot from you. And with that, I think I'd say, you have a class coming up. That's one of the pre-conference things.
Yes.
So tell me a bit about the class.
Well, it's three people. It's me and Scott Myers and Andre Alexandrescu, and those two are absolute legends. I would happily learn technical speaking from them. I think we have very different styles. So between the three of us, we'll cover a lot of different ground. And what we're planning to do for the day is mostly things that people, if the attendee was speaking at Cppcon, and a fair number of them are, they could act on that right away. So we're not going to cover like how to write a good talk proposal or let's see, structuring your abstract, because that's done. That's water under the bridge. It's really about that moment that you stand up on the stage. Although we are going to be talking about your slides and your demo font and those sorts of things. And really, it's just the experience that comes from having done things badly, or if you're lucky, having seen someone else do things badly, and then being able to say, don't do that thing. And we are asking the participants to actually do some talking, and then we'll give them some tips based on what they're doing. And I expect it to be a very fun day.
So it sounds like if someone was new to taking a talk and they ended up taking the pre-conference with you, if they had speaker anxiety, for example, they'd at least get practice, actual tips to be able to help them through it this year?
Absolutely. And everybody's a little bit nervous. And the trick is just not to be so nervous that you're incapacitated by it. And then you don't look nervous at all. So when you see other people, you think like, wow, they're so confident. And if you were in their head, you would know differently. So that's part of it. Just talking about the actual mechanics. And there are really simple things about where you stand and how you stand, and people just need to be reminded. They're not automatic. Someone has to tell you. So I'm happy to be someone who'll tell you.
And you'd mentioned slides, which I find really interesting because, I've read some of the books like Slideology and such, and you have these parts where they're like, you need your slides to be short, or you need this. But then as a programmer, I'm like, most of the people I see want to see some actual code on a slide, which normally is not short. So they'll also get help with building slides that are compelling and help teach.
Nobody, right? Where, nothing can be read, and especially can't be read from the back. But I also don't want to go to a talk that's just pictures of kittens and things. Like, it's hilarious at the time, but later you can't tell someone, oh, there was this really excellent point about why const expr is helpful. Let me just see if I can, was it the dog? No, I think it was the angry looking camel, right? Like, it's so I put more pictures in my slides than I used to, but yeah, I have words and I have code for sure.
Right on. What about questions? Thinking on your feet kind of a thing? I know that the few talks, or the one talk I did do, that was a challenge for me, answering those questions that came up out of the blue. Will you guys cover some tips on that?
Yes, definitely. Questions, and those questions that are more of a comment right in the middle of your sentence too. That's entertainment. So part of what you can do when you're in a teaching circumstance is you can interrupt someone and give them a chance to handle an interruption. Most of the time, attendees are pretty respectful, but you have to know your venue. So if you go to something like C++ Now, that's a very interactive activity. Whereas if you go to to Cppcon and you're in the big room and there are 2,000 people in the big room with you, it's unlikely that someone in the very back of the room is going to say, "You have that backwards. You're so wrong." They'll say it at a microphone later, but
That's for sure.
I've had some very intimidating questions, and my second year at Cppcon, I was doing a talk that I was not sure how it was going to land. And when I saw Bjarne walk into the back of the room, I'm like, no, make him leave. I did not want to. But
yeah.
It
Questions from him trying to, I don't know if I'd want that one either. So aside from the class, you also have a talk and a keynote. Want to hit on either of those?
Sure. I'm getting more opinionated in my old age, and these are pretty opinion-based talks. The big one, simplicity, I've been working on it for over a year now, and it's had some audience time, but it's getting longer here at Cppcon, which is great. I can talk about more things, and it's really about what I value in code and what I try to turn code into. And I like to tell a story about a software product that has like a 5,000 line switch in it and a 15,000 line file.
I don't know which one that is.
No idea at all, I'm sure. It's super complicated, and it didn't get there, overnight. It took decades to get like that. And so, what's the opposite of that? What would make that simple? What would make that more understandable? A person can. And so of things I've come to value and practical things you can do to make your code speak for you when you're not there. The other talk, what do we mean when we say nothing at all? There's a lot of places in C++ where not using a keyword carries meaning.
Right.
So if you don't mark a function virtual, it's not virtual, but there's nothing in the code to say that it's not virtual. There's just the absence of the keyword. And I started thinking about that and thinking about ways to work with that as a developer. Are there ways you can express yourself so that even when you don't type a keyword, everybody can understand your intention? So that's a challenge. It's expressive, say, to use arranged for, but how is it expressive to leave off a keyword? So that's the talk. And I wasn't sure it was a talk when I first got the idea. I had to practically write it before I submitted it because I'm like, is that just a thing that you talk about when you're drinking? Is that is that really a talk? And I decided in the end, yeah, I think that's really a talk. I think it's an interesting way to think about your code and to think about what you're telling people.
Nice. So are there any other talks that you're looking forward to seeing or that you think
oh my gosh. So I've built out my schedule online, and everybody should. One of my tips for going to a conference is build your schedule out in advance and try to have at least 2 talks in every time slot. Because if you go, sometimes the talk just isn't what you thought it was. You come in and the abstract doesn't match the title, or the level is way above you or even way below you, and you don't have to give an hour of your life to that talk just because you sat in the back of the room, but you don't have time to figure out what else to do. You need to have your second choice already picked.
Right.
So just bail on that one and go to the next one. It'll be fine. If you want to be nice to the speaker, pull your phone out of your pocket, stare at it in horror, and run out. And they'll think, oh, she loved my talk, but she had a call. So that's fine.
I like that etiquette.
But I will leave a session if it's not right for me. I think it's better than being on your laptop or your phone or whatever and ignoring the speaker. So I have at least 2 in every single time slot, but especially Friday, there are some sessions I just don't want to miss, but I have to because there's 3 and 4 of them at a time.
Right.
And, I will just have to watch some recordings. I just will.
It's funny you mentioned Friday because I will say that in the previous years I've gone, there's only been a couple times I've made it through Friday, but this is one year that I'm actually making it through the following weekend because we have the post classes too. But I agree, there's some great talks on Friday. Are there any other tips you have for the first time goers?
Have a plan. Yeah, I mean, I set myself goals to this day for conferences, and it might be simple. It might be like tweet 20 times.
Mhm.
It might be to meet certain individual people. I'll have a list of people I'm hoping I'll be able to bump into and talk to. Um, it could be to go to a talk on something I really don't understand at all as a doorway into starting to understand that new thing. I find that being in a room with other people when I'm trying to do something difficult, I can look around and I feel better if I'm not the only one who's puzzled. Whereas
Right.
when you're watching on the video, the speaker's so confident that you can sometimes feel like, "Ah, why don't I understand that?" So being able to look at other people and going, yeah, okay, they find this a challenge too. So I usually have at least one talk that I would not normally be interested in, deliberately to be interested in something different for me.
Excellent. Well, that's what we had for this morning. And I will say that I'm looking forward to both the keynote and your talk because in my experience of working with you, there's a lot that can be read in code when you don't write something. And as you know from that 15,000 line file, there can be way too much said all at once.
Yes, exactly. So it'll be great. It'll be a wonderful week. I'm looking forward to it a lot.
Me too. I look forward to seeing you there, Kate. Have a great
See ya.
morning.
You too.